For 50 long years, the doors of Elvis Presley's old garage at Graceland remained locked, covered in dust and mystery. It seemed like a treasure trove of vehicles, each with its own unique story. Many believed it held nothing more than forgotten cars and tools from the King's glory days. But when it was finally opened, what they discovered inside left even the most devoted fans speechless. But what other secrets did his garage hold? Join us, because what was found inside that garage wasn't just shocking, it was heartbreaking, beautiful, and unforgettable. The dust of time. For years, people spoke about the locked garage behind Graceland, wondering what secrets lay sleeping in the darkness. Some said Elvis had hidden treasures there before he left this world. Others believed his most precious memories were locked away, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. The rumors grew wilder with each passing year, and the mystery deepened like shadows at sunset. The garage stood silent, its heavy padlock rusting but never breaking. No one dared to touch it. The Presley estate kept it sealed, respecting the King's final wishes. But time has a way of changing everything, and after half a century of silence, the decision finally came. The doors would open. The world would see what Elvis had left behind. The day arrived like any other, but something felt different in the air. A small team gathered outside the weathered garage door, their hearts beating faster with each passing second. What waited inside? Forgotten cars worth millions? Priceless artifacts from his legendary career? Or perhaps something more personal, more intimate, more real than anyone could imagine? The locksmith stepped forward, his hands steady despite the weight of the moment. He positioned his tools against the old padlock, and then it happened. Click. The sound echoed through the morning air, traveling through time itself, connecting this moment to that final day when Elvis walked through these doors for the last time. The door creaked open slowly, reluctantly, as if the building itself was unsure about revealing its secrets. Darkness spilled out like water, and with it came 50 years of trapped air. The team stepped inside, and immediately dust rose around them like spirits awakening from a deep sleep. It swirled in the dim light, each particle carrying memories that had been locked away for so long. Their eyes adjusted slowly, and the first shapes emerged from the shadows. Old Cadillacs stood like sleeping giants, their chrome dulled by time but still proud. Motorcycles leaned against walls, their leather seats cracked but somehow still beautiful. Everywhere, mysterious shapes hid beneath dusty tarps, promising discoveries yet to come. The smell hit them next, powerful and overwhelming. Oil mixed with old leather, metal touched by decades of stillness, and something else, something harder to name. It was the scent of time itself, of moments frozen and preserved, of a life paused in mid-sentence. One by one they began their work. Each tarp they lifted revealed another piece of Elvis's world. A guitar case, worn and scratched, sat in one corner. They opened it carefully, finding an instrument that had known his touch. Nearby, a box overflowed with letters, their edges yellowed and delicate. Some were from fans, others more personal, more private. Then someone found it, tucked behind a stack of old records, a film reel, labeled in handwriting that made their breath catch. The word "private" was written across it in fading ink. What moments had been captured on that film? What memories had Elvis wanted to preserve? But as they continued searching, moving deeper into the garage's secrets, one team member stopped suddenly. There, in the far corner, almost hidden behind everything else, sat a small chest. Unlike everything around it, this one was locked. Not with a simple latch, but with a serious padlock, as if whatever lay inside needed extra protection. Everyone gathered around it, drawn by an invisible force. The chest was made of dark wood, worn smooth by time and handling. It was small enough to hold in your arms, but something about it felt heavy, important, final. They knew immediately that this was different from everything else they had found. This chest had been locked since the day Elvis passed on. Whatever lay inside had been hidden away for exactly 50 years, untouched, unopened, waiting for this very moment. The team looked at each other, understanding that their greatest discovery still lay ahead of them, locked behind one more door that time had kept sealed until now. The secret chest. The chest sat before them like a guardian of time, holding its secrets close. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone's shoulders, making even breathing feel loud in the silent garage. Finally, the locksmith knelt down, his tools ready, his hands surprisingly gentle for such rough work. This was different from opening the garage door. Plus, this felt sacred. The lock resisted at first, stubborn after 50 years of keeping its promise. Minutes felt like hours as metal scraped against metal, each sound echoing in the dusty space. Then, with one final twist, the lock surrendered. It fell away into waiting hands, and the chest was free to reveal what it had protected for so long. Someone reached forward, fingers trembling slightly, and lifted the wooden lid. It rose slowly, hinges groaning softly, releasing air that had been trapped since 1977. The team leaned in together, their hearts beating as one, and peered inside. The first thing they saw was paper, lots of it. Personal letters lay stacked carefully, each one folded with precision. Some envelopes were addressed in Elvis's own handwriting, the ink faded but still readable. Others were blank, their contents a mystery waiting to be solved. Beneath the letters, handwritten notes covered in his unique scrawl told stories nobody had ever heard. Photographs emerged next, pulled carefully from their resting place. These were not the famous shots the world had seen a million times. These were private moments, intimate glimpses into a life lived away from cameras and crowds. Pictures of family gatherings, quiet afternoons, genuine smiles captured when nobody was watching. Each image felt like a gift, a window into the real man behind the legend. But then something made everyone freeze. Nestled among the memories lay a sealed envelope, larger than the others, more formal somehow. The words written across its front made the air grow thick with emotion. To my fans, when I'm gone. The handwriting was unmistakably his, written with care and purpose. This was no accident. Elvis had planned this moment, knowing that someday, somehow, these words would find their way to the people who loved him. The team stood in silence, understanding the magnitude of what they held. This was his final message, his last conversation with the world. Whatever words lived inside that envelope had been waiting 50 years to be heard. Nobody reached for it. Not yet. It felt too important to rush. As they carefully moved other items aside, more treasures appeared. A stack of tapes, bound together with a rubber band that crumbled at the slightest touch. A small voice recorder, old-fashioned but well-maintained, sat beside them like a faithful companion. It looked like something Elvis might have carried with him, recording thoughts and melodies whenever inspiration struck. Then they saw it. Another note, smaller than the envelope, tucked beneath the recorder. The message was simple but direct. Listen before you read. 3 words that changed everything. Elvis had left instructions, a specific order for how his final gift should be received. He wanted his voice heard first, wanted to speak before his written words were read. The realization washed over them like a wave. They were about to hear him again. Not through old recordings played on the radio, not through concert footage or movie soundtracks. This would be different. This would be Elvis, speaking directly from beyond time, sharing thoughts he had saved for this exact moment. One team member reached for the recorder with reverent hands. It felt heavier than it should, loaded with the weight of unspoken words. They checked the tape inside, making sure everything was ready. The others gathered closer, forming a circle around this small device that held such enormous significance. Fingers found the play button, hovering there for just a moment. Everyone held their breath. The garage, which had been silent for 50 years, was about to come alive with the voice of the king once more. The lost voice of Elvis. The tape began to spin, and then it happened. His voice filled the room, breaking through 50 years of silence. It was Elvis, but not the Elvis the world remembered. This voice trembled with emotion, cracked with vulnerability, carried weight that no stage performance ever could. This was the real man, speaking from his heart, sharing truths he had never dared say out loud. He started slowly, searching for words that had been buried deep inside for too long. He talked about fame, about how it felt like a beautiful prison with golden bars. Everyone wanted a piece of him, he explained, pulling and grabbing until he no longer knew where Elvis Presley ended and the king began. The man he used to be, that simple boy from Tupelo who loved music and dreamed innocent dreams, had vanished somewhere along the way. His voice grew softer as he spoke about loneliness. Crowds surrounded him always, thousands of people screaming his name, yet he felt completely alone. Nobody saw him anymore, he said. They only saw the legend, the image, the idea of who they wanted him to be. The real Elvis, with his fears and doubts and simple human needs, had become invisible even to himself. The pressure crushed him daily, he admitted. Being the king meant never being allowed to fail, never showing weakness, never admitting that the weight was too heavy to carry. Everyone expected perfection, expected magic, expected him to be larger than life every single moment. But he was just a man, tired and struggling, trying to hold together pieces that kept falling apart. His tone changed when he mentioned Lisa Marie, his daughter. The team could hear love mixed with pain in every word. He worried constantly about what she would remember, what stories she would hear, how the world would paint him after he was gone. Would she understand that he loved her more than anything? Would she know that every choice he made, good or bad, came from a heart that tried its best even when it failed? He spoke about dying misunderstood, and the fear in his voice made the listeners' hearts ache. People thought they knew him, he said, but they only knew the surface, the performance, the carefully crafted image. Nobody understood the battle raging inside, the constant fight between who he was and who everyone needed him to be. He feared leaving this world with that gap still wide open, with the truth still locked away. Regrets poured out next, memories of moments he wished he could change, decisions that haunted his quiet hours. He talked about relationships damaged by his impossible life, about time stolen by obligations, about dreams sacrificed to feed the hungry machine of fame. His voice broke occasionally, pausing to gather strength before continuing. The recording began to wind down, his words coming slower, heavier, as if each one cost him something precious. The team stood frozen, tears streaming down their faces, feeling every ounce of his pain and humanity. This was the gift he left behind, the truth he needed to share, the real Elvis finally being heard. Then came his final words, spoken barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of a lifetime. "If they ever find this," he said, his voice fading like a light going out, "tell them I tried." The tape stopped spinning. Silence crashed down like a wave, filling every corner of the garage. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The echo of his voice hung in the dusty air, a ghost made of sound and sorrow and hope, leaving them standing in the aftermath of truth finally told. The final letter. The envelope felt delicate in their hands, fragile as a butterfly's wing. Someone carefully broke the seal that had kept Elvis's words private for all these years. The paper inside was yellowed at the edges, folded with care, waiting patiently to share its message. As they unfolded it, everyone leaned in closer, desperate to read the words written in his own hand. The handwriting was shaky, not the confident script they had seen in earlier letters. It trembled across the page like someone writing through deep emotion or exhaustion. The date at the top made their hearts sink. March 1977, just months before he left this world. He had known something then, felt something changing, and needed to put his thoughts on paper. The words began with an apology that reached across time. He was sorry, he wrote, for becoming someone he never meant to be. Fame had twisted things, changed relationships that should have stayed pure and simple. The people closest to him had suffered because he could not separate the performer from the person. Every relationship became complicated by his impossible life, tangled in the web of expectations and demands that never stopped. He wrote about his daughter with aching love, wishing he could be the father she deserved instead of the absent figure who missed precious moments. He spoke of friends who had drifted away or been pushed aside by the machinery of stardom, family gatherings that became photo opportunities, private conversations that somehow found their way into newspapers. Nothing stayed sacred. Nothing remained untouched by the monster his career had become. Then the letter took an unexpected turn. He confessed something shocking, something nobody had suspected. He was planning to step away from music, to disappear quietly and start over. Not retirement in the traditional sense, but a complete rebirth. He dreamed of becoming anonymous again, of walking down streets without being mobbed, of making music simply because it brought joy rather than because contracts demanded it. He had been making arrangements, he explained, putting pieces in place for this new beginning. Somewhere quiet, somewhere far from Memphis and the constant pressure, a place where he could rediscover the boy who had fallen in love with music before the world fell in love with him. He wanted to learn who Elvis was when nobody was watching, when no audience demanded perfection. But then came the line that made everyone stop breathing. He had left something important, he wrote, something that explained everything. It was hidden in the place where it all began. The words were deliberately vague, mysteriously cryptic, as if he wanted this treasure hunt to unfold slowly. What did? He mean? Where did it all begin? Here in this garage? Back in Tupelo? At Sun Records? The team read and reread those words, trying to decode their meaning. One team member started looking around the garage with fresh eyes, searching for clues they might have missed. The Cadillacs, the motorcycles, the stacked boxes, everything seemed to hold new potential significance. Another searcher knelt beside one of the old cars, examining it more closely. Something about the floor beneath caught his attention. The way the old car mats lay seemed odd, uneven somehow. He pressed down with his hand and felt something strange. The floor gave slightly. Not quite solid, not quite right. His pulse quickened as he pulled back the brittle mats, revealing the concrete beneath. But wait, this section looked different from the rest. Seams that should not be there traced a rectangular shape. His fingers found an edge, a gap where metal met metal. This was not the original construction. This had been added, hidden, disguised to look like normal flooring. Others rushed over, seeing what he had discovered. Together they began working at the edges, finding purchase where metal had been carefully fitted to hide what lay below. The pieces started to move, resisting at first, but gradually giving way to their determined efforts. Then came the sound, metal scraping against concrete, loud in the silent garage, announcing that one more secret was about to surrender itself. They had found something beneath the floor, something Elvis had buried here in his final months, something waiting 50 years to see light again. Beneath the floor. The metal panels came away slowly, revealing darkness underneath. Someone grabbed a flashlight, and the beam cut through the shadows, illuminating a space that had been sealed away from the world. A compartment lay hidden beneath the garage floor, carefully constructed and perfectly concealed. Elvis had gone to great lengths to hide this, to protect whatever secrets rested in this buried chamber. They lowered themselves carefully, reaching down into the space with gentle hands. The first thing they pulled out was a metal case, heavy and sealed tight against moisture and time. Then another and another, each one marked with dates from his final years, each one promising discoveries that could change everything people thought they knew. The cases opened with soft clicks, revealing their treasures one by one. Film reels nestled in protective wrapping, their labels written in that familiar, shaky handwriting. Photographs spilled out, showing moments never meant for public eyes. Documents lay stacked beneath, personal papers that told stories of dreams and plans that never came to be. The photographs alone were breathtaking. These were not publicity shots or concert pictures. These showed Elvis at home, truly at home, in ways the world had never seen. Him laughing with his family around a dinner table, the smile reaching his eyes in a way it rarely did in professional photos. Playing with Lisa Marie in the backyard, both of them covered in mud and joy. Sitting quietly on his porch at dawn, coffee in hand, looking peaceful and simply human. But the film reels drew everyone's attention like magnets. Home movies, each one labeled with care, each one preserving moments he wanted to remember. The team handled them with reverence, understanding that these fragile pieces of plastic held irreplaceable glimpses into a private life. One reel stood apart from the others. The label read "The Real Me" in letters larger than the rest, underlined twice as if emphasizing its importance. This was different. This was intentional. This was the message he most wanted preserved. The team knew they could not play these reels immediately. The film was old, delicate, vulnerable to damage after so many years in darkness. They made arrangements, informed the Presley family, and contacted experts who specialized in restoring vintage film. Days passed as careful hands worked to save these precious recordings, cleaning and repairing with infinite patience. Finally, the moment arrived. The restored reel threaded through a projector, and the team and the Presley family gathered in a darkened room. Someone hit the switch, and light flickered through old celluloid, painting images on a white wall. The screen came alive with grain and imperfection, but none of that mattered, because there he was, Elvis, sitting alone at a piano in what looked like a room at Graceland. But this was not the Elvis anyone recognized. No jumpsuit sparkled under stage lights. No makeup smoothed his features. No audience waited for magic to happen. This was just a man, tired and real, wearing simple clothes and bearing the weight of everything he carried. He looked directly at the camera, and his eyes held a sadness mixed with hope. Then he began to speak, his voice soft and honest, saying things he had never said publicly. He talked about what he truly wanted from life, stripping away all the layers of fame and expectation. Peace, he said, simplicity, love without complications, the basic human things that somehow became impossible for someone like him to find. His fingers found the piano keys and music filled the room. These were not songs anyone had heard before, no familiar melodies, no radio hits, nothing the world knew. These were intimate compositions, emotional and raw, songs that came from deep within his heart. He played them slowly, carefully, pouring feeling into every note. He explained between songs that some of them were for Lisa Marie, musical letters he wanted to leave behind, things he struggled to say and words found voice through melody, love expressed through chord progressions, apologies wrapped in harmonies, hopes for her future carried on gentle rhythms. Then he revealed something that made the watching team lean forward in disbelief. He had been working on something special, he said, a final album, recorded in secret, that would show who he really was beneath the legend. Not the performance artist, not the king, just Elvis. The music was different from anything he had released before, quieter, more personal, stripped down to bare emotion. But circumstances had changed, he explained with regret evident in his expression, and the album never saw light. He talked about the songs he had written, the stories they told, the truth they carried. This was supposed to be his goodbye to music on his own terms, his final statement before disappearing to start that quiet new life he dreamed about. But time had run differently than he planned, and those recordings remained locked away with all his other secrets. As the reel continued, his playing grew softer, more contemplative. He finished one last gentle melody, his hands lingering on the keys as the final notes faded. Then he looked up at the camera one more time, and despite everything, a faint smile crossed his face. It was sad but somehow peaceful, the expression of someone who had made peace with things left undone. His lips moved, forming words the team strained to hear through the decades-old audio. Maybe one day, he said quietly, they will understand. Not just understand his music or his career, but understand him, the real person behind everything. The boy who loved music before music became his prison. The man who tried his best even when his best was not enough. The screen flickered once, twice, and then suddenly went black. The reel had ended, cutting off abruptly as if there had been more to say, but time had run out. The projector kept spinning, casting empty light onto the wall, but Elvis was gone again. The room sat in absolute silence. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Tears streamed down faces as the magnitude of what they had witnessed settled over them like snow. They had just seen Elvis's final performance, his truest self, his last attempt to be understood by a world that had never quite seen him clearly. The world reacts. The news broke like lightning across the planet. Within hours, headlines flashed on every screen, every newspaper, every device that could carry a story. Unreleased Elvis recordings found after 50 years. The words seemed impossible, too good to be true, yet they were real. The garage at Graceland had finally surrendered its secrets, and the world stopped to listen. Social media exploded with emotion. Fans who had loved Elvis for decades could hardly believe what they were hearing. Young people who had only known him through old recordings suddenly understood why their parents and grandparents had worshipped this man. The discovery felt like a miracle, as if Elvis himself had reached across time to speak one more time. Within days, Graceland became a pilgrimage site unlike anything seen before. Thousands of people flooded the gates coming from every corner of the earth. They brought flowers, letters, photographs, and tears. The lawn filled with candles that flickered through the night like stars brought down to earth. People stood in silence, processing the weight of what had been found, feeling closer to someone they thought they had lost forever. Media trucks lined the streets, satellites pointed skyward, cameras capturing every moment of this historic revelation. Reporters spoke in reverent tones, understanding that this was not just entertainment news, but something deeper, something that touched the human heart in profound ways. Experts flew in to examine the recordings, and one by one, they confirmed what everyone hoped. Everything was authentic. Every word, every note, every frame of film was genuinely Elvis. The Presley family faced an impossible decision. These recordings were deeply personal, meant for private reflection, yet the world deserved to hear them. After careful consideration and many emotional discussions, they chose to share portions of what had been found. Not everything, because some things remained too intimate, too sacred, but enough to let people understand the man behind the legend. When the first clips were released, the response was overwhelming. People listened with tears streaming down their faces, hearing vulnerability they had never expected. Radio stations played the recordings with quiet respect, letting Elvis's honest words fill the airwaves without commentary or interruption. The music he had created in secret touched souls in ways his famous hits never could, because this came from a place of pure truth. The revelation changed everything people thought they knew. For so long, Elvis had been an icon, a symbol, a figure carved from marble and placed on an unreachable pedestal. But these recordings showed something different. They revealed a humble man who struggled with the same fears and doubts that haunted everyone. He worried about being a good father. He felt lonely despite the crowds. He wanted simple things that fame made impossible. His pain became visible, but so did his gentleness, his hopes and dreams, his kindness and love all came through in words he had hidden away. People saw that beneath the jumpsuits and the screaming fans and the sold-out concerts lived a soul that felt deeply, loved completely, and tried desperately to be understood. The garage itself transformed into something sacred. It was no longer just a building, but a symbol of rediscovery, of truth finally surfacing, of secrets that needed to be shared. People spoke of it with reverence, understanding that within those walls, Elvis had left his most precious gift, his authentic self. Fans around the world felt a connection they had never experienced before, not to the superstar who gyrated on stage, but to the man who sat alone at a piano and poured his heart into music nobody was meant to hear. They understood now that Elvis had been one of them all along, just a person trying to navigate an impossible life with grace and love. The discovery rippled through culture, changing conversations about fame, humanity, and the price of being worshipped. People began to see their heroes differently, understanding that greatness and vulnerability lived side by side, that legends were still human underneath the glory. Weeks passed, and eventually the time came to close the garage again, not to hide secrets this time, but out of respect for what had been shared. The team gathered one final time, standing in the space that had given the world such an incredible gift. They pulled the heavy door slowly, watching as shadows reclaimed the interior. The padlock would not return, because the truth no longer needed guarding, but the door would close, protecting the sanctity of what remained inside. What do you think about Elvis's garage? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more celebrity gist. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.